Welcome to the House by Vegas Horror Podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And this is our second podcast in our monthly format, where we will be discussing general things we've watched and partaken in instead of having it devoted to a specific movie. Just because...
And genre agnostic, I think. We'll lean towards the horror, up front maybe, but a wider range probably.
Yeah, so, but with the timing it worked out. So the big new horror film that came out recently was The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man. Which was directed by Leigh Whannell, who he was one of the writers of the Saw franchise, and then he directed Insidious. Chapter 3. And was it Upgrade?
Yeah.
And this is where... So, Sean, you and Derek both saw this.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
And this is the Universal Monsters post Dark Universe falling apart. Remember, like they did like the photo shoot where they had like Johnny Depp and Tom Cruise and everybody and
then that never
hanging around, and Javier Bardem and Russell Crowe.
I just saw a picture of the cast of Taxi.
Yeah.
And it looked very similar to that. And somebody said, oh, the new Dark Universe is looking great. But it's like a modern picture of them. They're all back together, and it's like the dark background.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so I didn't get a chance to see it just because I've been so damn busy. But both of you saw it. And it's been doing pretty well at the box office because it debuted domestically to like $29 million, I think.
Made for $7.
Yeah, so because Blumhouse does things on, kind of shoestring budgets when it comes to Hollywood movies. So it's going to be a profitable movie, and I think Leigh Whannell's based on this performance. Universal signed him, or I think it was Universal.
It was Blumhouse for a first look deal, I guess.
Okay,
so for
Blumhouse.
2 years, which I think 2 years is standard.
They distribute through Universal typically.
Yeah.
So did very well. So you two saw it. So what were your all's thoughts?
And two, for context, like Rotten Tomatoes is really high. Most people in the film community are extremely high on this, and it is a uniquely. I guess, female perspective on the film. Like, it is about...
I guess it is. But my big issue with it, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't a bad... It was definitely better than Tom Cruise's The Mummy. So I think making this more of a horror-centric or thriller, because I don't really know if this is necessarily horror.
It seems like an approach they took was, instead of just saying, we have this property, let's just launch it in some way, shape, or form, saying, let's take a social story or let's find a story that we can then fit this into versus just saying, like, we have to make this. Yeah. Make it in 6 months.
Well, this is more of a kind of like I guess like a battered woman story somewhat. Yeah. And which is an interesting approach. I just think because you start off in the middle, right? Not to get in spoilers, we start off with her fleeing. That's where the movie starts off, and
they don't make it hammy and lean into a lot of the abuse and stuff.
Yeah,
they don't sit there and show. It's just like, look, she was battered based on just context of what's happening. So it's good that it does not lean into that, and it doesn't feel like a exploitation film in that regard.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, the first, it's kind of like a paced weird. It's weirdly paced. It's. I feel like a lot of stuff doesn't really happen till maybe the halfway point in the movie. Yeah. And that's kind of when you realize, there is an invisible man, and then things...
Spoilers, there is an invisible man.
Invisible man. And, then things kind of happen, but it goes from, 0 to 100 really quick. Mm-hmm. And there's not much playfulness in it. There's maybe, 1 or 2 scenes but then it just seemed like once it starts rolling, it's there and it's happened.
Yeah, it's for me, and I talked about this, I've worked with a women and family center that deals, and I've interviewed a lot of people that have, been victims of abuse.
Trauma and reliant.
And just recently finished a huge project with some. And so me, it's this is not entertainment, but I think there's, again, this is my unique perspective. And I think there's huge value in people feeling seen and represented. And if that works for them in that context, then they feel comfortable with it. If they are, abuse survivors or whatever, it may make them feel like this is an issue people are paying attention to. You know what I mean? Yeah. The bottom line is drawing attention to it, and it's not overly exploitative, but for me, it was partially uncomfortable a little bit, but it was also it just felt like it almost leaned into the horror genre more than I would want it out of this film, because it did feel almost like I like the characters in it, the actors, like I liked all that, but, and you've probably seen in the trailers, like people are questioning if she has something wrong with her, if she's like just kind of dreaming this up, basically.
Yeah. Well, because like what's funny is in real life, or not real life, but you go like on Reddit and they have like these different. There's like a glitch in the Matrix subreddit where it's just essentially because like after the Matrix like became a thing, like oh there's a glitch in the Matrix, so people are sharing like oh I walked past the same house 6 times in a row on the same street or something like that. There's people like oh I woke up in a different reality today and the entire world has changed and no one believes me. There's all the people that feed into it. Then there's always like somebody's like, hey, so nobody it's like asking you about what's different is really your friend. You should probably, if this is real, go see a mental health professional.
Yeah.
Because this is a sign of like schizophrenia or, you know, these different things. So in real life, if somebody's like an invisible man attacked me, you'd be like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and two, she has had abuse, so you know, is it PTSD and stuff, and that is an extremely interesting angle. Like that is like, hey, this is. I could not think of a better angle on this, really, if you were trying to deal with a serious issue. Yeah. But, and also, people seem to really like this, but also I'm just kind of like, man, I don't need that out of this like universal, because I guess they're trying to change the perspective on it. But when you think Universal movies, you're thinking, I mean, they were horrifying at the time, but they've taken on a different life. You know what I mean? Like they are different.
They're on Doritos commercials.
They are, yes, exactly. It's a weird, it was a weird, it's a weird thing to go into that. But having said that too, like, there's a lot of, I guess he is toying with her a lot. And like Derek said, spoilers, there is an invisible man. It's not all in her, So, but all those, it almost gets repetitive. Like I liked it at first, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, he's just torturing her over and over. I wanted the story to move along also. And when that starts moving along, that's good also. But then I was like, okay, maybe it's going to go in this direction. And it didn't go, I don't know. I think I felt unsatisfied by the full conclusion of it.
I did too, because again, without spoilers and just what we talked about, the ending would have been a little bit better if it had further delved into mental illness and there's more than one character that I could relate to. But they didn't. And then to me, it's just like they went in the horror genre and they just kind of dipped the very tip of their toe in the water and like, yep, that's it. That's good. And then most of it was just kind of like action-y. And then
a little bit. Yeah.
And then there wasn't a whole lot of horror to it. There was enough.
I think the first part is very much that because it is all just waiting. It is like a ghost movie where you're waiting to see something in the corner, and some of that is done very well. But I was kind of over it after like a couple sequences. Like I was like, okay, I get the point. Like I'm ready for some more the story to evolve, and I actually wish they would have taken out a couple of those and maybe built up again more of the drama element of it. Yeah. And instead of it feeling like we had this good setup with these characters that I like, relationships that are interesting, and then we just kind of go into that, and it unfolds, I guess, in a broader sense. Like the relationships almost seem to get very general, and like things that happen, all of a sudden it's these very general situations, and none of them feel like you gleaned anything other than, oh, they think she's crazy, and now this like I don't know. It just didn't feel that interesting on that level once you got like part of the way into the movie. But I love this setup. I think they did a pretty good job of making something that was at least a little tense, or you're looking in the corner, looking for the invisible man. I like that some. But again, the way the action shot, it's cool. Not my favorite style. A lot of people love that style of his. He does those like one takes when, you see the camera turns, and then there's a little bit of that in the trailer. Like there's security guards in a hallway. Spoilers. Again, I'm not going to talk about much that is not already in the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff's already in the trailer. It just, for me, like I would have either like it to have been a little more playful with the visual man tropes because like this is a movie, like if you go back and I've only watched it once, But I feel like in a rewatch, you're not going to pick up anything you miss. Like, I don't feel like you're going to go back and watch a movie like, oh, there's him doing that, or there's the.
Well, it's
this is not going to have that. So it's not as fun.
It was like the Haunting of Hill House. There's all the ghosts in the background you didn't see. So I mean, I guess like, so you both saw The Mummy, right? The Tom Cruise one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, would you say that you prefer this approach, where it's like these smaller scale stories, where they just kind of build a story that happens to have those elements in it, or do you want it more schlocky, like it's up front? Here's a Frankenstein. Or Frankenstein's monster. Here's a creature from the Black Lagoon. Let's not.
I kind of wish I
make a socioeconomic status movie, and then the creature from the Black Lagoon shows up.
That's fine. It's just like I want it, and this is minor spoilers, but I want her to be like and again, you can't hurt a movie for what you want it, but I think for me to have been like okay with how much she gets kind of tortured and abused and like scared to death in the first half, I wanted her to be extremely empowered by the end of it, and maybe like, a long sequence where suddenly the tables have turned and she is the one pulling the strings. Like I wanted that to happen to where it felt like she flipped it on him, and then give me that side where it's almost like a horror movie played from his perspective. Like again, that's the wrong way to look at movies, but that would have made me feel more comfortable with like her getting like hammered and terrified through so much of this film.
Just desserts.
Exactly. There wasn't enough of that for me that I think that made me feel like, oh, this ends up being a satisfying thing.
Nowhere to the extreme, like, Evil Dead 2, Ash goes from like the battered survivor to the kind of badass hero. Not like to that. I mean, like a lot of movies do that though, where by the third act, they've kind of turned the tables.
And honestly, the $7 million budget, I almost feel like if they would have had more money, they would have done something bigger with the end of this movie. And I don't know if they necessarily, I'm not saying maybe this is exactly what they wanted to do, but you feel like they spent they probably spent a lot of time and money on one specific action scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And after that, it was a lot of smartly directed scenes of tension, like in the house of you looking in the corner and then something happening, which was cool. But after like a couple of those, I was like, all right, let's move these things along.
When a lot of that happens and there's like no real interesting mystery, or there's no real like, okay, if it's not a gore fest, which is not, if it's not a gore fest and it's not like a interesting mystery, and it's just kind of somebody being somewhat tormented, it's not.
I think you nailed something that I didn't pick up on, is like there's no driving force for the narrative for her.
Yeah.
It's literally, she's just like
surviving.
She's with his family, she's with somebody that kind of is helping her out, and she's basically staying with this man and her daughter. And it's like, there's no goal for her.
Yeah,
she's not, it's not like she's like, there's some plot elements that put her in a certain situation.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like her trying to figure out from the trailers, they're like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
So it's nothing like her going deep into that, which her character may not do that, but there was no driving force in that, and you feel like you're just kind of waiting around for her to be tormented until reveals happen.
Well, because you think about,
and like her being a techie and him being a techie.
Yeah.
And it's like you think she would.
And there's nothing with it.
And it's like, there's the ashes, and then it's like,
it's one of those things where.
Very true. Yeah. And there's a twist too at the end that I saw coming. People said they didn't, and I was like, I saw that part coming.
Seen a movie?
Yeah. I think a lot of times when you have like twist or things like that, it's like when you watch a bunch of movies in this genre, you watch a bunch of film in general, not a lot truly surprises you. I mean, there's a lot of times where a story plays out in a way that doesn't surprise you, but the emotional impact does, because of how they built things up and made you care about things. But when you watch a bunch of stuff, like you go into most movies, and a lot of times you can say in the first act how you think it's going to go, then it probably goes that way, depending on the genre, the budget, and people involved.
But this one actually didn't go as well as I was hoping it would. You know what I mean? And again, that was just my ideal of it. And a lot of people seem to love this film and identify with it, and I think that's awesome. Like, I think this is definitely a very this film specifically is one that you have to go see it and form your own opinion, because people have a very personal responses to it. Like, even though I wasn't like 10 out of 10 on it, of all films, I'm like, still go see it. You might, but also if you feel like you will be, if you feel like it may be too much for you, I would tread lightly. That's another element too.
I've never used this word or felt this way, but I do feel like for certain women and I guess, men as well, like watching the domestic part could be somewhat triggered. Like I've never watched, never in a movie watching it. I'm like outside like Saving Private Ryan and like watching it's like.
But thankfully, there's not like the, it's not the overt scenes of the abuse happening. It's implied, and then the further abuse is by way of the Invisible Man. So at least, but still, it's a violent. There's some violent things,
I will say, like, the one scene in a video game that kind of ruined one scene in this movie is in Metal Gear Solid, the original, when you first get introduced to Gray Fox. Like, when you think of that.
The ninja.
Yeah, ninja, it's like, there's a scene where you first get him, and then you kind of have a mirror scene of that in this.
Cyborg Ninja?
It doesn't live up to
What was his name? Gray Fox, what was it?
He was Deep
Frank Yeager.
No, but like what were they called him? Was like Cyber Ninja or
I don't remember. I know he also went by Deep Throat.
Stealth Ninja, whatever. But yeah, like I still need to see that movie. I still plan to. I've just been really busy lately.
There was one other thing I was going to say about it, but I can't quite because there's a lot of things to say about this movie. But
like by no stretch of the imagination is it bad.
No.
But the same way I feel about it, the same way I feel about Halloween 2018 is like it is a good movie. There's nothing really memorable about it. Mm-hmm. And like everybody was like well acted and did a good job. But if you were to ask me like a movie called Invisible Man, like there's no scene that's memorable to me. And I think again that's where like if you're playing with this, you either you ramp up the mystery element to it, or you make it just a gore fest. Or you just make it something like Haunting of Hill House, where there's a lot of, repeat viewing to add more to it. And I don't think this is.
I think a difference between like that and like a show though is the show has 10 episodes.
Yeah, but there's still.
But it seems like I haven't seen it, but I do think I would prefer to continue this approach of lowering the budgets and the stakes. In terms of the world isn't at stake. They're not stopping, a light in the sky or something. Having the movies be a little bit lower scale and letting them just be stories that somebody, kind of has creative control over versus kind of a by committee summer blockbuster action film. It seems like that's kind of the route they need to take for a while.
The only thing is...
aren't they doing Invisible Woman now with Elizabeth Banks? Have you heard about that?
No.
But it's a comedy.
Yeah.
But it's something with...
I mean, it'd be interesting.
Yeah. Like I think she might be in it and directing it, but I think she's involved with it at least.
The only thing is...
But it's a totally different tone. Like I said, I think this is a comedy.
When you move into the real heavy hitters, Wolfman, Dracula, or Frankenstein, I don't know if this approach... I don't know how you do it.
I thought of a Wolfman approach. I mean, I'm not gonna mention it because I'm like, is that again? I guess all of it could.
Wolfman would probably work.
What was the Jack Nicholson werewolf movie from the 90s?
Werewolf in New York or something.
No, it's just called it's a one single word. I think it might just be called like Wolf or something.
Yeah, but it's got because didn't it have who was in it?
I can't remember.
Didn't it have Catwoman in it? Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
So it had the Joker and Catwoman. Around that same era. But yeah, like I haven't seen the movie yet. I want to. Let's see. Then you also saw the Harley Quinn movie.
Yeah, which we'll call it by its current name, which is just Harley Quinn Birds of Prey. And I hate the Suicide Squad. I'm sure at one point they came out in 2016. I'm sure we talked about it on the podcast.
I finally saw it at some point on HBO.
Suicide Squad, I think, was awful. I don't ever think that Margot Robbie did a bad job of portraying Harley Quinn.
Well, just in a movie that wasn't great.
It's different when you have a character that is directed by a man that is mainly there to be like eye candy or just a lot of. We have a female director handling this character. It's vastly different than what you got with a male director, which I think is for the better because her character is more fleshed out and actually likable and wasn't just in clothing that made no sense for a majority of the film. I really enjoyed it. It's weird because it didn't do that well in the box office, which I don't know why it didn't, because considering like DC, their last couple movies had been good. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's because the original name was so long.
I think it's a few things. I think there's a combination of brand awareness because it was Birds of Prey, which immediately bring to mind like Harley Quinn, because a lot of times, Batman. You know what Batman is.
Well, Harley Quinn in the comics was never in Birds of Prey.
Well, I think also, too, there is probably still some negative sentiment going against it because of Suicide Squad not being a movie. Because it made a lot of money, but I think people came out of it saying, I didn't love this.
That's true.
And then it's like, oh, this is a sequel to that? I don't know about that. So I think they had the element of people weren't super aware of that it was out. That you had, some possible negative feedback of Suicide Squad. People watched it, but they didn't love it.
Well, honestly, like the trailer, I assume this was going to be better, but the trailer, it still felt in the same vein of Suicide Squad. You know what I mean? So that could have been a negative. That could have been a negative.
Well, the Suicide Squad trailer.
That's what I'm saying.
More so than the movie.
That's what I'm saying. So if people saw that trailer and went to see all the movie, and they're like, oh, and they saw this trailer, like, well, that doesn't mean it's going to be interesting. It could have been that. But yeah, it's like Shazam. Shazam has not been a big name, and that did pretty well box office wise, right?
I mean, this Birds of Prey may end up doing about what Shazam did worldwide, but it came with the higher prestige of Margot Robbie and
came out at a different time, too,
and already
so this one came out in February. Shazam came out in April.
Okay.
So both of them were like, well, I don't know. In recent years, the blockbuster summer season has started all the way up into March to some extent.
Yeah. Well, you kind of look at what surprises me is DC has done female movies so good or so well. Whatever. They've done them so well because Wonder Woman's been great. I think this was really good. I think this was just as good, if not better, than Captain Marvel. Now I get that her character had 2 movies, and they're also doing Suicide Squad 2, so she's gonna be in that as well.
But it's Suicide Squad.
Is she in that also?
Yeah, she is.
I think so, because I saw James Gunn had posted or stuff where they had just rapped on it.
She's in it. And
I knew they were doing it. I didn't know she was in it.
But they kind of figured out how they wanted to do the character, revamped it. But also, Margot Robbie's just a really good, charismatic actor. Mm-hmm. And I think that helps a lot, too.
And she had a lot to do with the script, too, didn't she?
And this one's more of her and the Joker break up, and then the fallout is she's pissed a lot of people off. So now she no longer has the protection of the Joker. So it's her just kind of dealing with all that. And there's a lot of fun stuff in it. And I could rewatch this a lot easier than a lot of Marvel stuff. Because I think a lot of times the Marvel, what you get is a fun one-time story, but you don't really have much to go back to.
Yeah.
Whereas this feels more like something you could actually... There's actually a plot, and it's really small scale.
I think, too...
There's nothing big about it. And you have Hugh McGregor in it.
Ewan McGregor.
He's
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's a very good villain in it. Now, I don't know if he stayed true to the comics. I don't know much about Black Mask. But there's just a lot in it that I enjoyed. And again, I don't know anything about the Birds of Prey. So maybe that made it a little bit easier because I'm like, I mean,
most people seem to like it. Yeah, I didn't make it out because there was multiple things I wanted to see. But I think the only thing I've seen this year is Invisible Man that I've had time to.
Well, because we'll have announcements on it and, future weeks. Short project a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So I've just been dug into that. I've seen that about 1,000 times. So I can't really discuss that yet. Give you a beat for beat review of it. It's amazing. 10 out of 10. So I haven't really had a chance to get out to the theaters yet, but I do want to see Invisible Man. The Birds of Prey probably want to wait for it coming to HBO because all the DC stuff usually goes to HBO.
So, yeah, especially when
I think that
the Max, whatever, HBO Max.
The lesson I think they may have learned, and the difference between some of the Marvel movies, is that if they go into them saying this isn't, a building block towards a larger thing, it's just its own thing, and it doesn't necessarily. There's no guarantee of a sequel or spin-offs. It's just this is a project, and once it's complete, it's complete. That may give them a little more urgency around some of those projects because Joker made all the money and
made a lot.
Well,
of money.
For me, I think I would have to assume the creatives behind it. Marvel, they probably have fun making these films, but they also feel like they are working within some sort of restriction, tonally. You know what I mean? In some regards, I know they've some have been further out there, but all these characters got to show back up in an Avengers movie, But these films, if somebody gets to come, like Todd Phillips gets to come pitch this to Warner Brothers, and then the Birds of Prey, they're going to feel more ownership over them, and they know that they're probably not going to get taken from them and rewritten by somebody. They feel like, okay, they've taken this from birth, they've pitched this, they've got this. It's just, they've got even more invested in it probably than a Marvel for hire, director or whatever.
Kind of the way I hate to even you say stuff like this, but a lot of Marvel movies to me feel like a movie, and this one felt more like a film, as where like it stands alone on its own.
Cinema.
Yeah, I mean, but it's something that like it actually has a story. It stands alone on its own. I don't have to have watched any movie ever to have watched this. I don't have to watch any of the DC movies. I don't even have to watch Suicide Squad because they don't even mention Suicide Squad. They don't show the Joker.
They don't show Jared Leto's Joker?
No, you literally have to know nothing
how
about
crazy is it? Like, just think about the fact there's going to be a Michael Morbius movie coming out starring Jared Leto. Like, out of all the Spider-Man stuff as a kid I thought they would have made, I would have never thought they'd make a Morbius movie.
Yeah.
That's the corner they got backed into when superhero films blew up and all they had was some Spider-Man remnants. You know what I mean?
Like, they have, like, Hobgoblin... And they have a lot of these like other.
So a Hobgoblin horror film
would be incredible, and that to me would be interesting. Morbius only works if you try to somehow connect it to the MCU and get Blade. Yeah. That's the only way I think you make it exciting. But it's just funny like that is the skid mark on the underpants of DC, and they have just essentially just that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it is funny because I saw somebody the other day posting. A meme, it's like, oh, when the other actors that played the Joker before and after you get Oscars for it.
Well, it was I think the one I remember is like a SpongeBob meme, like Squidward looking at Patrick and SpongeBob, and they both have Oscars, and then it shows Leto, and he's just sitting there with nothing.
Let's see. So, since the last podcast, I did get to watch Parasite, though.
Yeah.
Because since the last episode we did in beginning of February, the Oscars happened, and Parasite won Best Picture.
Oh, yeah.
What about Gone with the Wind?
Yeah. Let's get more of those movies.
Yeah, 3 hour long.
I'm surprised they didn't include something about Birth of a Nation, but maybe that was too on the nose. But with Parasite, it's so funny because like there's different people you see that I'm not going to name anybody specifically, just not that anybody would know who I'm talking about, but just there's sometimes I see people that I think are kind of like faux film intellectuals, where they have these like blazing hot takes that are so completely wrong. And they're going on about how, Parasite shouldn't have won it. And it
was this like somebody locally or like
different, like people locally and not. People are saying like, oh, Parasite didn't deserve to win. Like the funniest one to me is like, oh, Parasite just bludgeons you over the head and doesn't get his message across. The movie that did that really well was Joker. And like to me, it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah, I didn't see Joker, so I can't comment on that.
Because I did see it. And the thing with like Joker was, I think if it had not had the whole media circus around it, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
And it's funny because even like the director seems to have misunderstood the movie he made, at least in the press junket. Or maybe he was just being a troll just to drive up.
I think a lot of it was just the drive up interest in the movie.
Because he was talking about, like, oh, the social justice warriors and stuff like that. It's like, but this movie is kind of on the side of like left of center. Like, I don't understand what his complaint is. I think it was just everybody had so much conversation around that movie that it made this big cultural thing. Not a bad movie by any means, and Joaquin did deserve to win awards for his performance because he did a great job. Just Parasite, even being a South Korean film as an American viewer, to me, like, the message of that sunk in pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think a movie has to be in English.
I just think that sometimes there's cultural barriers.
People will, not watch it or something.
Yeah, but it's like, I've watched enough stuff, not that I'm a guru in foreign film, but I'm not, but, like, I've watched enough stuff to know, like, if something's good, it's good regardless.
I mean, too, like with Parasite, like I'm not even taking the subtitles stuff into, because to me it was fine, but like it's just sometimes like different cultures you can go into something and be like, I don't really get this because of the customs and things like that, especially if it's like about a class issue or about a social issue. But this movie, it all worked so well that it didn't really require any suspension of disbelief. Well, and two, sometimes there's like different, like films from different parts of the world have a little bit different logic than we're used to seeing in movies. So, because stuff that didn't follow like a traditional 3-act structure and stuff, people kind of get thrown off.
Well, I want there to be a foreign film that follows kind of like because my most experience with anything Asian is anime. It's what I grew up watching, and that's my familiar area. But I want to watch a very serious movie, and the trope in anime is like if somebody says something or embarrassing, like and they like fly off. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there at a table and that happens and they don't explain.
There's probably plenty of films like that,
yeah,
actually.
But like you would like to see that in a serious film just to see Americans are doing what.
But yeah, but like the complaints I'd seen about it, it's like, well, no, I think it did get its point across, and it's one of those things that hits home all the better. Like if you have interacted with people that you would consider to be like ultra wealthy, because without really spoiling what the movie's about, it's just about interactions between low income poor people and rich people, and that's really all you need to know. And it gives you like a unique twist on it, and it doesn't just tell some boring,
I mean, it's a thriller movie in some regards. So now that it's been out a while, I almost saw it as like an Ocean's 11 style heist movie about poor people just trying to get jobs. Like that's part of the film is they are figuring out, like, it's kind of an evolving plan, but essentially they are figuring out a scheme, and the whole end goal is just so they can get paying jobs.
Yeah, the whole
the whole end goal is just to have income,
and it's not killing people or
no,
anything
it's
like
just
that.
it's just kind of
making your rent payment, be able to afford a cell phone plan.
But that's only, again, that is not the full picture.
But yeah, so very much recommend that if you haven't watched it.
It is definitely a genre film. It's not, this isn't just some sort of, straight drama. I think that's what pulled a lot of people in too, because it was just an enjoyable film, regardless of any sort of message or anything.
It is kind of amazing when you think about in recent years, we've had The Shape of Water and Parasite win Best Picture Oscars. And something I thought that's really another funny, like, bad hot take is, well, Parasite shouldn't have won best film because it's a foreign film. It should have gone in 1917. It's like, that's from Britain, you dumbass. Like, it's a foreign film too. And it wasn't even nominated for best foreign film. So what the hell? I mean, like, or was it foreign language?
It might be foreign language.
Oh, okay. But yeah, somebody's argument is you can't have a movie that's not made in America.
All I'm saying is if their accents, like, okay, look, if you took people who spoke English, but you went to somewhere in the South or somewhere really up north, and you like let people who aren't even Americans, and you let them listen to it, they might not understand it. So it might as well be a foreign film.
You watch a film with everybody that has thick Louisiana accents, and they're like, I got a subtitle.
Or you watch, the best thing is when you watch stuff that's set in the Deep South, and it's a mostly British cast.
Yeah.
So like The Walking Dead, it's, I'm going to eat a cracker.
What's his son? Carl.
Well, I think, but like...
that show's still going on. 20 years from now, it'll still be going on.
But, yeah, so...
Daryl Dixon will be 90 years old.
Parasite, worth watching. Joker wasn't bad either. It's just a movie, I think, that the media stuff kind of soured people on it and or activated them in its favor, whichever side.
It triggered them into watching it. They triggered everybody into watching the Joker and making it build.
Like, I was interested in it's kind of a Scorsese crime movie with the Joker.
No.
But...
Was it that? No, I don't know.
But, I'm trying to think of other stuff I watched. I've watched more of The Outsider and HBO.
Yeah, I need to catch up with that. And also Alex Garland's show starting this week.
Yeah, Dabs. I want to watch that. So it's on FX on Hulu, which is a confusing thing. So if you have Hulu, it's now FX on Hulu. Or I think that after Disney bought Fox, they're wanting to take more of the FX properties and shift them onto Hulu as their streaming platform. Because I think they can make more direct profit from that.
With Deadpool will be on FX. Deadpool won't be on Disney.
And also, is it Hilary Duff wants the new Lizzie McGuire to be on Hulu and not Disney?
Well, didn't they stop production on it?
I don't know. It's just so confusing. But it's Disney. It's Disney After Dark.
Because devs, so it's the Alex Garland who directed Annihilation, and
he wrote it,
but it was based on a book. He did the adaptation.
He rewrote it.
And he also written 28 Days Later.
Yeah, and he wrote and directed Ex Machina.
And then I think he was attached to doing drafts of a script for Halo or something when they were making a Halo movie. But so it's a show. It's got Nick Offerman in it and other people. So it's something I was really interested in.
Yeah.
It's up my
Nick
alley.
Offerman with the weird haircut.
And then they're also going to have the new Fargo season have Chris Rock in it, and I think in April, and Jason Schwartzman. So that'll be interesting to see.
Something else I want to talk about while I forget, because I won't be on the podcast the full time, is and this is something I forgot to mention, my biggest takeaway from Invisible Man is that I want to watch Candyman. Because that came on before the trailer, and I was like, that looks like way more interesting. Yeah. The new Candyman trailer looks really interesting. I was like, that looks like a more interesting movie than what I just watched.
The new Candyman trailer came out, and it's always interesting when any of these types of things come out because you see all these arguments stir up around it. There's like discussions like, oh, is Tony Todd in it? Is he not? Is it a cameo?
Is it
he a
in the
feature
same?
player?
It seems like it's in the same universe as.
I think it's in the same universe. It's not a full-on reboot where they're saying,
because like I saw there's a couple of characters that were
yes, the mom of like the infant is back. At least the same actress.
And I thought the woman from the original was also
was she in? I can't remember.
But basically, I think that the thing is like, so Candyman, produced by Jordan Peele, but not directed by. A lot of people confuse that.
But did he help write it or did he just produce it? I can look that up while you're talking.
But yeah, so he was involved in it, and like the trailer looks really good to me.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's like a horror movie with like a social edge and a message.
And mystery, like it just seems.
Because if you because like, so you haven't rewatched the first Candyman, have you?
I've watched it. I have not rewatched it recently.
Because I had watched it as a kid, I'm pretty sure. And then it had been on. Now it's on Netflix. You can go watch it now because you'd watch.
And real quick, we've been talking about Jordan Peele, but Nia DaCosta is the director. Yeah. She wrote it along with Wynn Rosenfield and Jordan Peele.
Yeah,
so I thought Jordan Peele did have
she's the director.
But she is directing this, and
I saw some people who kept saying like Jordan Peele's Candyman. Yeah. It's like, well, he's producing it, but it's somebody else is directing it.
And he helped write it, but again, originally from Clive Barker though. And I, because
the Clive Barker story too is like set in England in a different time period. And it was the original film that then took it to
Chicago,
Cabrini Green, like a housing project in Chicago, and made it about that type of setting versus what the original story was. Now the sequels I don't really remember. I remember seeing parts of them and not being all that into it, and the reviews are pretty poor for the sequels.
Candyman is one of those interesting movies because I think for me just being a kid and having like the Bloody Mary urban legend, this falls kind of in line with that. Just as far as being in the mirror and reciting it. So I think there's always been a little bit of intrigue in that aspect of it. It's been a while since I watched the original, but I know there's like a photographer that goes there.
And rewatching the original too, I was thinking like, oh, I see why Jordan Peele, brought this onto Monkey Paw to kind of reboot, but make another one because his films do feel more Clive Barker than say Stephen King.
Yeah.
Because we watched. What did we also? Did we watch Hellraiser? I don't know. I watched the first two in the recent years. Watching this one, granted they are heavily adapted, but they feel so much more like. I don't know. They have a different feel, obviously, but even though they're adaptations, but Jordan Peele seems like his horror comes from more of that lane more so than like a Stephen King. And two, Invisible, again, watching Candyman after watching Invisible Man, like I was thinking, man, I wished it was more of a blend of this. Candyman's not perfect, but I do appreciate more of.
Well, Candyman, I do remember there being a little bit of intrigue and mystery as to what it was, who he is.
Well, and two, like Candyman, I know like from what I had rewatched the original and I read up on the sequels, and there are some decisions they made in the sequels that people didn't like as much. About how it kind of recast the character of Candyman in terms of like...
Yeah, which I wonder if it's the second one when they actually show him getting killed. Like, I remember that as a kid.
So people... Because remember, so I was reading up on it after I watched it, and when it came out in the 90s, initially producers were kind of concerned, like, is like the African-American community going to be upset that we're making like a boogeyman type character, like a Jason or a Freddy or somebody who's, black. And then they talked to a number of people like, well, no, why would we care? We want to have...
Yeah. But also it still did get some backlash,
We want this centerpiece character. So anything that you do, you're going to get people to agree and disagree with the decision. But I think the thing that people really took issue with in the sequels is that instead of having him just be a free man, he made him a slave or the child of a slave or something in the sequels, which introduced that beyond what was in the original first film. So people thought that lessened kind of the character, or, it changed the complexion of it.
He didn't get it. He went from being, it would be more interesting, he's more like a Freddy Krueger.
Well, because too, and the thing, like Freddy Krueger deserved to have happened to him what happened because he was doing stuff to kids. In Candyman, the whole premise is he was an innocent guy. He just, had a relationship with somebody who was white at the wrong place and time, and then that caused everything to happen.
It's kind of the premise of the movie Holes.
So it's one of those things. It's one of those things where it's like, you play the movie a little bit differently, and he's a superhero if it's Spawn or something, like where you come back from the dead, the Crow. If it's the Crow, he's a hero, not a killer. So, just a little bit of separation from being like a different type of movie.
Now that comes out this month,
June 12th. So, and two, I didn't realize it. I guess the new one, it says a spiritual sequel to the 1992 horror film Candyman that returns to the now gentrified Chicago neighborhood where the legend began.
Yeah.
It looks good. It looks like one of the lead characters is maybe transforming into the Candyman.
Well, he was from Watchmen.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Well, it's something that's intriguing to me, and it'd be kind of cool to see something because Handyman's not like a super known property. It's known in the horror world. So I think
people generally are aware of the name,
but it's not.
But I don't know.
It's not Freddy, and it's not. You think of horror icons. You don't ever see Candyman on that list, or I've never seen it.
I normally I haven't. I'm not a huge Clive Barker fan, but I'm happy to see some more Clive. I want to see some more Clive Barker reboots and stuff. Aren't they doing a bigger Hellraiser? Because I think some people.
That's been in talks for forever.
I think somebody pitched. I don't know. I think they pitched a female Hellraiser for one of the lower budget sequels.
Yeah.
And they said that was denied because they were saving that for the reboot.
Well, they've been talking about doing a reboot of Hellraiser for forever. Like at different points, Clive Barker was going to direct it. At different points, there's going to be all these different people. But I think that Candyman to me, it does have some cachet because remember as a kid, you're like, oh, you say Candyman in the mirror 5 times and then he shows up. Well, it's like you said, it ties into the Bloody Mary thing. Because I remember being at like parties or when I was 8, not parties, like sleepovers, whatever.
It was Candyman or Bloody Mary.
People would do Bloody Mary in the mirror and stuff like that.
We used to do Candyman in my house.
Yeah. And then everybody would freak out, like, oh, I saw something. It's like, no, you didn't.
Yeah. But I think that's why it's intriguing and it's interesting, and it's also that franchise isn't overplayed. It's not like I think it's one of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I think it's one of those series that could be top tier horror franchise at this point if the sequels had been better.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those movies, like whether or not you think the Halloween 4 or 5, whatever, Jason Takes Manhattan are great movies. Those went on long enough that it kept that brand fresh and it kept it playing on cable. And regardless of the quality of those films or how you feel about them, they did make money and they did get out there and get seen and they play on TV every single year. With Candyman, the one that probably has the most cachet is just the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, that's kind of waned over the years.
And I wonder if it's because there's not as much flash in it. Like the Clive Barker.
I think it's because it has
more measured.
It has more of a message or a story behind it versus being more of just a surface level guy killing
Well, again,
people.
they pull out. They spend more time on the mystery and stuff like that rather than filling that up with a bunch of kills. You know what I mean? So if you're flipping through the channels, what are you going to stick on?
And it's more like...
if you're just like on the channel surfing.
But sometimes to me, that might be a little more interesting.
Yeah, but I'm talking about general population.
I think it's also a little bit more operatic, more like Phantom of the Opera or something.
Something I read, I was, not to get into like the subtext and all that, because again, the Candyman 92 was directed by a white guy too, so now we are having a black director, black writers. I believe, I'm assuming the third writer may be black. He may not be, but there's something I think it was horrorhomeroom.com. They wrote an article about it a while back, and they pulled this excerpt about bees from a book called Bees in America, How the Honeybee Shaped a Nation. And it's, as British society threatened to collapse under intense poverty during the 17th century, bee symbolism became useful as a tool to fight poverty, suggesting that the natural order of the hive might be a good model for humanity. Male drones have only one job, mating with the queen, and at summer's end, the worker bees cast them out to the hive to save the expense of feeding them through the winter. It was identification of the drones, the non-functional and expendable members of a hive, which provided a simple biological reason for poverty. Poor people were simply drones, too lazy to improve their own condition. The drone analogy proved useful for generations as a label for the poor and unemployed, rooted as it was in natural law. And they said much, depending on your perspective, you could read that different ways. You know what I mean? Like he was, and I think they also took the angle of he should have been doing the things he was supposed to do, but instead he had relations with, somebody outside of his race in an era where that was, taboo. And they also drew parallels to her kind of going into projects. And again, they several times, they're like, she's like, I'm not a cop. Like she felt she shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? And she gets attacked in the bathroom and stuff. So, you know, I guess there's parallels there. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot to read into with this, but I'm sure that new one will be very much rich in things to read into and from a different perspective.
Well, it's too like something, because we did Jacob's Ladder and then they did that recent remake.
Yes.
And that seemed more of kind of a sputtering. None of us have seen it, just the box office didn't do great.
Yeah.
But this seems like a little bit more, since they're launching it in June, that shows some confidence in the product. Otherwise, they would have just dumped it in like January or February.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. The trailer looks very good.
When I saw the trailer, there's and like maybe when we see the movie, I don't want to see anything else of it.
Yeah,
I watch that trailer and I'm happy with it.
Again, people are putting a lot on Jordan Peele for this, but it feels in the vein of the success he's had with something like Us and Get Out, where they're able to have their cake and eat it too. It may not feel like it's, they have a lot of the pop, the fun, the sizzle, but there's a lot of meat on the bone, where it is not just the sizzle and it's not just a flat message movie or something. You know what I mean? Like it seems like they're really, he has nailed that twice for me. And hopefully because he is a writer on this also, he is really able to amp that up. And she looks like direction wise, it looks very cool.
And this is the first time he's really been involved in a project that has some name recognition going in.
Yeah, that's true.
Because all the other ones have been first of. This one has been around
more
since
of a blank slate to kind of reintroduce it to everybody because it doesn't have all the history behind it and baggage. Like the Halloween movies, they were doing like screenings for Halloween Kills or whatever. People were talking about it. Like, you just forget about how, even though they disregarded most of the sequels, like how much imagery are they still kind of beholden to somehow address?
Yeah, that's true. It's probably like, this is maybe one of the best reboot situations. Again, this is a spiritual sequel to a horror icon you could get. It was a Clive Barker thing, and then a white guy, made it centered around
race issues,
race and poverty, but again, a white female lead. A white female lead was the lead of it.
Initially, they were going to have that reverse and have Virginia Madsen be the friend character and an African American actress be the lead. But then it was, I think it was either pregnancy or sickness or timing or something made it where she got the lead role.
And that really changes a lot of things with race. When you do that, like that,
because in the movie comes from her perspective as almost like an interloper. Or, because in the movie when she goes to the Capri and Green, like, well, don't come here and cause trouble for us. And then she does, of course.
It's amazing they just didn't recast. And knowing how much that changes the film. And maybe he was blind to it. I don't know.
I mean, it may have been written where it was about the same. They just kind of play some of the issues a little bit differently.
But again, it's like perfect scenario because there's been 3 films. You know what I mean? They've faded a little bit in consciousness other than name, and again now there is a black director that is she and a female too. She's handling this, so it's a whole different perspective.
And it's not like they haven't milked it dry. That's
what I'm saying.
It's not with Friday
the
13th.
It's not the 20-something film.
And even with Halloween, like we talked about in the podcast, how many times can we see the same
Michael
matchup?
Myers going after people?
Yeah, no.
Michael Myers versus Laurie Strode.
Yeah, Michael Myers v. Laurie Strode. Like, how many times can we watch that matchup?
Maybe 2 more if they don't kill her in this new one.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to see. I want to see her go up to Michael and she's like, judo chop. And just like make it over the top goofy.
I do like
or just shotgun to the face, first frame the movie, and then the movie's not even about that.
Everybody would be very happy, I'm sure, if Tony Todd was in this, but it is very cool that it's like a whole new spin where this guy's maybe getting turned into it. And isn't there like an invisible force for a little bit, like that they're going to play with?
That maybe I think you talked about this with Freddie, is it's been so long since that was a thing, like who even knows what he actually looks like?
Yeah.
It could be anybody.
Yeah.
Well, I think that might be kind of fun to play up with too, whereas maybe you have an overarching, or maybe you have a little cameo of Tony Todd, but it might be interesting that everybody's Candyman.
Well, somebody pointed the shot almost looks like it's a CGI shot where it looks like the lead actor mixed with Tony Todd a little bit, like there's a reflection.
I've heard rumors there's like a cameo, or he's a bit like.
They've been so tight-lipped.
People are very upset because a lot of times in the horror community, it's loyalty to your favorite actors. People are like, oh, no one can be Freddy but Robert Englund. It's like, dude's 70 now. Even if he says he wants to do it, if they actually get down to it and say, here's your makeup schedule, he would probably be like,
all right, look.
And two,
he said Kevin Bacon. I'm all for a Kevin Bacon
I mean,
and also too, like there's loyalty to this being, you know, one of the, I guess maybe one of the first that I can think of big black horror icons. Like there's loyalty to that of being like, hey man, we've got to honor this guy. Well, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
at least in some regards, even more so than I think Freddy. Like Freddy had his run. He had 8 films or whatever. Many, you know, theatrical release. Like he had his run.
He had
a wonderful run. Yes, like Tony Todd. Like okay, you can kind of. Let's give him a little bit more face time before he's no longer on this earth. You know what I mean? And honor that legacy, at least somewhere, even if it's like a 15-second thing. Like
because he does
I would like that.
Like all the conventions, and you know, seems like a super nice guy. And
he was like in Die Hard.
Well, he's been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I remember him in Die Hard.
Because he was in Die Hard 2. He was like on an episode of The X-Files. He was The Rock.
Yeah.
Because wasn't he the one that said, I don't listen to Weekend?
Yeah, he's
Elton
like,
John.
You listen to Rocket Man.
He's the Rocket Man.
Yeah. And so he's a very good like character. I don't even want to say he's a character actor, but he's very good at being a certain specific type.
Well, he has a very specific voice that you can utilize for a lot of times. He's kind of like the mid-heavy. So like not the bad guy, but like somebody on the bad guy's side. It's like top tier henchman. You know, somebody like. But my point wasn't to say like to decry that. It's just saying like a lot of people in the comments like no Tony Todd, no deal.
Yeah.
And it's like I understand like you want the dude to eat and be able to make money. Yeah. That's fine.
But also again, the best thing they can do is not to be too beholden at the same time. Like I like that they're doing something a little bit different. So how did you feel about Candyman watching it again?
I still like it because it's not centered around the gore because there's really only a few kills.
Yeah. And
then, you know, some of the stuff isn't really a kill. Like there's so what, like 1, 2 kills you see on screen? I'm trying to think. Because
yeah, I mean it's not a lot. Is it about the mystery and everything?
It's 2 people, and then one person dies in the course of something we only killed. And there's like violence against an animal, but it's only like the aftermath you see not. But it's one of those things where like it wasn't predicated on gore and kills. It was more predicated on like, here's the story. And at one point,
again, I think that's why it's probably not as big. You know what I mean?
Like as Candyman, it's also the element of you gave him this sympathetic backstory, but he's going to kill people who are innocent.
Yeah.
So then there's kind of like that juxtaposition of stuff where it's more of like could be more of a tragedy versus something like Freddy Krueger, where it's like no, he killed kids and then he got killed himself. Yeah, like I am really excited to see where they go with that. Because it's something that hasn't been bled dry and done to death, and it can, you know, open up new opportunities. Because there's a lot of those horror franchises that are kind of like on the B tier that you can bring back up and have be big hits. Because like they tried to do that with that My Bloody Valentine 3D years ago.
Yeah, some of those they keep trotting out. But yeah, we get a new Candyman and a new Halloween this year.
Yeah.
Let's see how it turns out. But
we got Child's Play.
Yeah, and you got an Invisible Man also. We've had an Invisible Man.
Because like what's funny is like I think just part of the Chucky series, like they lived on in those sequels that the fans liked, like Cult of Chucky and Seed of Chucky and stuff.
Did you ever watch that, Derek?
No.
New one?
I think I only watched part of it.
I'm talking about I meant the theatrical one.
No, I've seen.
I did. Oh, I did watch.
Play.
I did watch the
Mark Hamill
last Brad Dourif one. You know, and
well, they're doing the sci-fi series too.
Yeah.
So Derek's been replaced by Baby Yoda because that came in the mail apparently.
That's what he had to go get and set up here in his place.
Yes. So that is now Derek. And let's see.
Sabrina season 3.
Yeah. So Julie and I started watching that, and I really was like, I always joked about the first 2 seasons. It felt like they had like 3 sets because that's the only place the characters went to, like the combination like magic comic, I forget what it was, essentially like a little diner with like milkshakes and malts and stuff attached to the store they always hung at, and then like their house, and then like the school. And then this new season continues to feel low budget, and just they did like a weird kind of musical thing, like where the characters were singing and they're in a band, and it's like I just don't know, it feels like they've kind of let this run its course. Because like we haven't finished. I mean, we'll probably finish it at some point. But just like when you're so busy and you have so many other things you haven't watched that are like, I haven't watched the newest episode of Better Call Saul yet. Like I'm gonna watch that 1,000 times over finishing this next episode of that. But you know, it has its audience and it feels like it's really doubled and tripled down on that, and that's fine. And it's like, I'm not somebody that's ever like, oh, don't bring social issues into it. But it does feel like they kind of are making it like focus on certain social issues more. And it feels a little bit more like that was their goal versus part of an organic story.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm sure like a lot of different people love that, and that's fine. It's just, like I'm never against social commentary. It's only when it feels like it was tacked on.
It's funny. You say that because I was listening to. I do audiobooks a lot, and there was one. That's what I'm looking at my library now. There was one I listened to recently. I think it was an audiobook. Maybe it was. I don't know. I just listened to the one about the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
This book really ties the films together, but I skipped the films I hadn't seen,
Yeah.
so I haven't listened to the whole thing. But I've completed all the movies that I've seen, which is most of them. But I don't think it was that. But I feel like there was a quote where there was somebody, and it was, I don't know who it was, but their big thing was like, first and foremost is to entertain, and don't go in there first with an axe to grind because it's not going to turn out well. You know what I mean? If you're just trying to do that and you're so focused on that you make everything bend just to that, and you don't try to think about the story.
Because you can say like, we need to make this.
Mm-hmm.
How about this is the central idea, and it's like loneliness or whatever, and then you kind of build the story out from there.
Yeah.
But if you go in and say we need to make people understand that the loner who, like, if you make it a very specific thing that you want to get across before you have the rest of the story, then it can feel like you're just kind of forcing things in.
For me, it seems like you would be hard not to. Have ham-fisted dialogue where it's like, well, we have to say this, so let's say, you know what I mean? Like it feels like everything would be less organic coming from that direction. And maybe some people work well that way, but most creators, I think, that are most successful, either they work so well on the story that they manage to blend it in, or it comes out of that idea.
And it's like, I'm not knocking it too much. It's just like this the new season feels more forced, not even on that aspect, but just like the overall season. Like I said, they did like where she's a cheerleader. Like we haven't finished it. Obviously, we only watched like a handful of episodes.
Seems like they could have, now they got this show, but it seems like they could have made a pretty cool Sabrina movie in a different tone. You know what I mean?
Well,
just like there's a difference between the Buffy movie and Buffy TV show.
Well, and two, the show like is much more like in the satanic culture and stuff like that. I bet there's a ton of people where people our age or a little bit older watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch when it was on like TGI Friday or whatever on ABC, and then who are excited for their kids who are now like 12, 13 to watch it on Netflix. And then they watch it like, oh no, I can't. We go to church. We can't watch this. So I'm sure there's been some of that. And then,
I had my my friend Barrett.
Yeah.
So his little sister, she hung out with some. Her name was Samantha, which also is a witch name. But anyway, she loved Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and when they had a kid, they named her new little sister Sabrina.
Yeah.
And I think it was because of that show. She was such a big fan of it. Yeah, that was a big show for the most part, Yeah, but for a certain demographic.
Yeah, so so I watched that.
And there was a Sabrina the Teenage Witch movie from like the 80s too. The Disney movie. There was and of course the comic book, what it's all based on, but there's been many adaptations of that. So I think there's room for a wild PG-13 horror film, Sabrina horror film.
Well, and two, it just does. It feels like it's a little bit hamstrung by the budget. So they introduce like some of the elements of them being in a band and doing like covers of songs you're aware of.
Yeah, she looks the part, amazingly. Like I've only seen the trailers for it, but I'm like, man, she looks like she looks like Sabrina.
Like I just wonder if they would have been better off going like the BBC like Sherlock route.
Yeah. Where
instead of being a 10-episode season, they would instead make it like 3 hour-and-a-half episodes. Like if you made it like condense the budget down and spend it on less screen time. But I think in the era of streaming, the amount of content at this point is always going to win out over the quality of content in terms of your budget distribution.
Did you watch any Archie?
No.
Because this is
Riverdale.
Riverdale. Yeah, this is like same universe, right?
Yeah, it's same universe, but since it's different, Netflix versus CW, they will never
Archie,
cross.
When you said Sabrina didn't have a big budget, like Archie seems like it has a ample. It seemed like it had an ample budget. It never felt shoestringed. So that's a shame because Sabrina being more side, horror and
that could also be just coming from the background of like understanding how production works. Some if they just recycled the same sets all the time.
Yeah, see, Archie, they may, but I mean, I feel like they are shooting on location. They obviously probably have some sets, like the diner and Archie, and this. It seems like they're shooting in a real school, but they are like at a drive-in. Like Jughead lives at a drive-in. Like it does not feel, the world feels big enough in there. They're always at different places. Again, I only watched probably like 5 or 6 episodes of the first season, but it felt ample, and it looked great.
Yeah, it's like with the Sabrina show, it never feels like they would go out in the real world and do stuff.
Yeah, Archie felt like that. Yeah,
it feels like they're on set and on location. Or very specific locations, or in the woods. Because you can.
Speaking of which, I was looking at Tina Fey's new project, and one of them is, I think it's a TV show, and it's a comedy based around a witch or something. Or witchcraft. It made me think of the sitcom From Love.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it made me think of that immediately. Like, is it going to... Yeah.
The Netflix show with Gillian Jacobs and Paul Rust. So I watched that. Like I said, just it's been a ton of time, because we shot this project. We'll be able to talk about it more soon. Post behind the scenes pictures and stuff.
Yeah, so you shot that a couple weeks ago.
But it's been watching, before I shot that, I did go back and rewatch some of Haunting of Hill House and a few snippets and things of different movies and just to kind of prepare for it. But didn't really get a chance to watch much actual new stuff.
Yeah, I've been rewatching a lot of older stuff too, just because it's like, I have 25 minutes. I don't know if I'll get to, complete this. So I've managed to watch Big Lebowski twice recently and a couple other things. Let me just look again before I forget. I watched Blood Simple. Again, just written that Coen Brothers book. There's the way that book is structured. Again, I was skipping around some. But I think it's typically the first maybe couple chapters is kind of the thesis on the Coen Brothers and backstory and their upbringing and stuff, and then it may go into one of their films, and then after that chapter, a specific film after that chapter, it goes into an interview and it may be somebody involved with that one along with many others. And then it'll go into another film and then an interview. But it's awesome because the interviews will be with a frequent composer they worked with. Yeah. And then it'll be Roger Deakins, because they worked with him a lot. And then it'll be with a set designer. And the cost, it's very cool, because you got a perspective of them from all these people that have worked with them on at least 4 or more films.
Wasn't Blood Simple the one where Bruce Campbell was in their faux trailer they used to get funding?
Maybe, because they were early friends with Sam Raimi, and that's their first film. I bet so.
That's where he's in the car and he gets out and stuff.
Yes, yeah. I'm trying to think of his name. The cast is great. John Getz is kind of the lead, Frances McDormand. And man, she looks so young in this. I've never seen her that young. I think it was her first film. Dan Hedaya, he's in Cheers as, oh my gosh, why can't I think of her name? The waitress the snappy waitress. What is her name?
I don't know.
It's her, Danny DeVito's wife or ex-wife now.
Rhea
Perlman.
Perlman.
It's Rhea Perlman's husband in that. He's also the dad. He's in Addams Family. He's that's trying to go after the fortune. He's the dad in Neither Roxbury. So, and then Emmett Walsh, which him.
Yeah.
Emmett Walsh. I mean, he was just in a million 70s movies. The Jerk, Blade Runner, Critters. Knives Out. So anyway, he is stellar. So just that cast alone right there, those 4 people, and that's pretty much the bulk of the cast. But the book makes a point to talk about, in Raising Arizona, when John Goodman and I can't remember who the other actor is, but when they come out of the mud, when they break out of prison, and they come out screaming, the book talks about how, I think one critic pointed out that Joel and Ethel Coen came out as fully formed filmmakers like that. Just burst out of nowhere in the Midwest as these fully formed filmmakers. And I do think this is a really good first film, but it's almost, they're so good at making movies. It's almost comforting to watch this, to be there was room for improvement.
They've evolved.
They have, and they've really honed their craft, but they did not start out in a bad place. You see why they, I guess, evolve so quickly
Because
too.
It is funny because some filmmakers, and musicians or athletes, you see like their initial debut, and it's like a breath of fresh air, and it's like
Yeah.
this big, seismic shift, and then they never live up to that. You see that with some people, and then one hit wonders, all that type of stuff. But then filmmakers, oftentimes you'll see somebody that puts out something that's their stylistic stamp, and then they grow their craft from there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you would say, with like the Coen Brothers, I don't know that you could say like, oh, this movie from 10 years ago is worse than their new one. They all kind of fluctuate in terms of which is your favorite.
And too many of them, the opinion grows over time. You know what I mean? Like they pointed out, I love The Serious Man. I think I've seen pretty much everything. I didn't see Lady Killers. When did that come out? Was that right before Old Country? No Country for Old Men? I think it was. So I didn't see Lady Killers, but I saw No Country, and I think I've seen every one in theaters since then. But like, True Grit was well loved at the time.
Yeah.
No Country. But like, I loved A Serious Man. I did rewatch most of that recently. Before doing this book, that's why I got that book, because I was rewatching some of their films. I was rewatching Serious Man. I love that. I think that's very good. But this enlightened me so much more on what is going on in that film, because I didn't get it all, much like watching, There Will Be Blood or something like that, or even some of No Country for Old Men the first time. Some things may pass you by.
Because I think the movies that you would say most normies know them best for are probably Oh Brother, Where Art Thou and True Grit.
More contemporary. I mean, Fargo. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess it's more of a Kentucky thing, because I hear a lot of people talk about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou.
Yeah,
because, like,
it was my great-grandmother, Maul Jones. It was like, she really liked that film when it came. She had a stroke shortly after it came out, but I remember watching it, and my grandma that she loved, she was like, yeah, she loves this film. And I think it's the music, it took her back, I think.
Yeah.
But I love that film as well. But Burn After Reading, I think, was stellar at the time. I love it, and that's grown in opinion, especially...
I think that one was one of those divisive to audiences, because it's like, going in knowing who they are, it's like, yeah, this is exactly what you would expect out of their universe.
Yeah.
But I think somebody goes in like, oh, it's a zany Brad Pitt comedy with like spy stuff and John Malkovich.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, damn it, why'd they do all this?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, their styles, and they've worked so well with Roger Deakins, too, because he always says, he hopes he doesn't have a style.
Yeah.
Because his goal is to bend to whatever the story is that he's telling.
But if you watch like Blade Runner 2049, then you watch, No Country.
Yeah.
There's no way to tell that's the same.
Yeah. Like, that, hey, both these films are from somebody supremely talented, but he tries to bend with each one. He's not doing the same technique, the same exact look. And I think they are very much the same way too. They are chameleons almost in some way, but you're going to get something a little surprising, and they've always had. And this book talks about like kind of their view on the many films are about how people are searching for meaning.
Yeah.
Or at least in the film, it is something kind of touched upon, and their belief is that basically it's kind of chaos, I think, and that's how their films go. Things always just spin out of control. So Blood Simple, and I think it was Joe Cohen was a label director before they were both put on as a directing team officially.
Yeah.
I think in Lady Killers. But so I think Ethan Cohen got an undergrad degree in philosophy. Joe, I think, went to New York for film school. So I guess that's why he took the lead on getting credit for director, even though they were supposedly both directors, co-directing from day one. But you very much see, like, philosophy is a big part of their films. But even Blood Simple from the beginning, you feel like there's a lot of things that the characters, or I guess it's voiceover, is ruminating on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's bigger ideas. The story's pretty simple.
Is it Blood Simple?
Yes, and but at the same time, that's not all there is to it. You know what I mean? So that's why you can kind of tell, like, hey, these people are people to look out for. They have ideas, and they aren't satisfied with just the genre elements. Maybe, even though this film is very a straightforward kind of film, but that is Criterion has released that. It's not on a Criterion channel. It's on Cinemax. So I just got like a trial to Cinemax to watch that instead of paying.
'Cause I had like a Coen Brothers Blu-ray pack. I need to go back and rewatch everything. They had Blood Simple and some other stuff.
Yeah, I've missed some of their, and like Miller's Crossing, I've almost watched 1,000 times. I probably bought that when I worked at GameStop, and I think I started it and I never finished it. And Barton Fink, so it's a lot of their earlier stuff I have never gotten to for some reason.
Wasn't it John Turturro has his Jesus spin-off?
And I heard that's pretty decent. They said, they said it goes places. The first teaser, I thought, I don't know, but the trailer. Did you watch the trailer?
I'd seen parts of it.
The trailer looks not that bad.
I'd probably watch it. But
yeah,
it's just funny that.
Yeah. So, and the other stuff I watched has been stuff I've seen. I started rewatching Indiana Jones films, Matrix films while working. Not at all related to my writing as far as like the project I'm working on for this bigger film, but just putting something on, because I got like the 4K disc for Christmas. But I did go see Joe Bob Briggs, How Rednecks Saved Hollywood. Of course, saw a lot of the usuals that we see at horror conventions and stuff there that,
It was put on by the Louisville Gore Club, right?
Yeah,
Steve Vessel.
I saw Steve Vessel's around. I don't think he really knows me that well. I've talked to him some, at conventions and stuff. But yeah, it was a great event. Art Sanctuary, I haven't been there before. It's a great venue. He said he always wanted to do a show inside of a warehouse that looked like it should be in a scene from a Tarantino film where a deal goes bad,
Yeah.
But they did the drive-in pledge, and of course, he got a little personal with it. He told his story about working in Lexington on the horse farms and stuff, and having to help impregnate horses and stuff, which I think he's brought up before on the drive-in. I remember him talking about working in Lexington. He also threw some shade at the local artist and bourbon distillers that have popped up around town, especially the ones, he's like, you're always supposed to be he said they're always in weird places because they have to be closest to the best and cleanest sources of water. He's like, these over here next to the Ohio River, like what do you think they're doing? So
this one's 3
and he went through the whole history of where many people that live in the Appalachian Mountains and then have migrated out from that, where they came from, the first redneck who coined the term the first time. So he went into this whole history and how everybody's kind of fanned out from there, how rednecks started, in Hollywood, bootlegging films were a big thing. And they said, I think he said there was one a year, at least one made every year for like 100 years. And my wife, she said, well, what's the show going to be like? I said, I have no idea really. I said, I assume he's going to talk about movies and show clips in between and give context. And I said, and I'm sure they're going to talk about Smokey and the Bandit, of all films. So yeah, he goes through much of the history, and it's not horror, there was
the cinema.
He may have touched on some of those, but it is very much, Ma and Pa Kettle, just all these little kind of exploitation hillbilly films and redneck films. And then he does get up to eventually, I'm trying to think the last two films he covered. Oh, Deliverance was one of the last ones. That's a big one. And then, of course, his thesis, is that, or his final film is Smoking the Bandit. It's like, wow, it's the greatest film of all time. So it was stellar, man. It was very good. It was very interesting because you've got a lot of background history of migration and why, why the, I guess, redneck culture formed and the difference between plantation owners. And he was talking about, this may be giving too much credence and excusing modern rednecks, which I can call whatever. We are from the south end of Louisville. That is the most redneck area of Louisville.
But there's the rednecks who are like sitting in lawn chairs, drinking a beer on the front lawn, or going and doing redneck stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what would be a redneck thing to do?
My dad raced cars at the sports drome.
Yeah.
Or, NASCAR adjacent.
Go swim in the rock quarry.
Yes, yeah. We were in the most redneck part of our city, I would say, wouldn't you?
No, I think Fairdale's.
Okay, yes, yeah. But we're right there. We're right there. We're on the southwest, yes. And then you go further out, and it gets deeper. But he talked about how many of the rednecks, at least early on, it was a lot of the plantation owners and stuff that were actually more elites that owned this land, that were rich landowners from like Europe and stuff that were against freedom of slaves. And many of the rednecks voted for it probably because they were like, screw those guys. You know what I mean? They're not getting theirs. So he was like, there was a distinction, like a rednecks film, like those rich slave owners are gone with the wind. Yeah. They aren't the rednecks. These are the rich elite whites that are owning slaves. He's like, many of the early rednecks, they weren't slave owners. They were too poor. Rednecks are traditionally poor. But I think over time, there has been this. There's been a
co-opting and a self-proclaimed, like, I'm a redneck, and then the intent.
And there's negative connotation with that now.
Well, and two, typically, I think there are some people that are like, yeah, I'm from Kentucky, I'm from Tennessee, I'm a redneck, but just normal person, just they, was like Big Red to drink with their White Castles that. I mean, and no shame in that.
Mountain Dew mouth too is a thing in Eastern Kentucky.
Well, Mountain Dew their original logo or whatever was like a hillbilly guy.
Yeah.
But it's just like, so you have the people who are like, I'm from this area and I like doing some, redneck things. I like to shoot bottle rockets off and.
Well, it's funny because he started, in the films he was talking about some of the movies, and all of a sudden I started checking off a list of like, I've been. Some of these things have involved me. What did I? Because I was like, I knew I would forget. Let's see here. He mentioned something about rednecks love to take another man's trash to be their treasure. I used to go dumpster diving with my great grandfather when I was like 6. Probably 5 and 7.
Have you gone to a monster truck rally?
Yes, I've been to monster. He didn't mention that.
I've been to those.
Inadvertently dated my cousin. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then kept dating her. She was a distant cousin a little bit. And I forgot, I dressed up as the Bandit for Halloween at the Volume Blood 2 premiere. Arnie gave me the nickname Jimmy Dean in high school. He went on to the Jimmy Dean sausage, went to that Heritage, ran from the cops, he talked about, the bootlegging was a big thing in films. I was like, well, worked with William to make a film. It wasn't about bootlegging, but it was stolen bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a slasher film set in
Kentucky.
Yeah. I mean, let's see here. He talked about Ma and Pa Kettle. Those were, and that's what my grandmother used to call my great grandparents. She said they're exactly like Ma and Pa Kettle. So I was like, man, I've really connected with a lot of these things. So, it's like, you don't really, if you are more liberal, you won't say, oh, yeah, I'm a redneck, because it is all that heritage and I hate stuff and everything. But when it comes down to it, we're from Louisville and the southern part of it. And, it's our background, and that's fine. Those parts are fine. As long as socially you're not.
As long as you're not using that as like a dog whistle to incite hate. If you're just saying like, I like to turn the sprinkler on and run around the front yard wearing my swimming trunks.
Be proud. Yeah,
and
be proud.
And go eat some grilled hamburgers and.
Yeah, that's a lot of people, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I'm gonna go to Dairy Queen, because if you ever go to the South, it seems like maybe it's like a Kentucky thing. I'm not sure about, but if you go to rural Kentucky, the one thing you can be guaranteed they will have is a Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
I feel like he may have brought up Dairy Queens for some reason. I told you a friend of mine, her husband, his family, started one of the first Dairy Queens there in Paducah, Kentucky. So he is part of that family, and he owns a bunch of Dairy Queens now, or a few of them.
So like when we shot that short film Hazard, which was out in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, the things they had was the smallest Walmart I've ever seen, because it's like the size of a dollar store. There was Dairy Queen, and then there was a Pizza Hut and a KFC, and that was pretty much the entire town. And it's just, it's funny, because I was planning to go to that, but then I know like at one point you had your shoot was scheduled during that weekend, and then you rescheduled it, and then I just forgot to do it, and then they sold out.
Yeah, and that too, I was just gonna have to miss out. I said, unless for something crazy happens, but I think 1 or 2 of our actors and somebody else couldn't shoot that weekend.
Yeah.
And but what's this weekend? Louisville Arcade Expo.
Yeah.
So Mike Lindell messaged me like, you going? I was like, oh no, maybe Sunday though.
Yeah.
So
everybody's got to get done on Sunday.
yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend that if it comes to your town. They did a meet and greet. So I did not know that. I just wasn't, I don't pay attention on, I don't know. I follow too many people on Twitter and everything, but I have my Fangoria with him on the cover, the newer ones, and I didn't get that signed, but you could buy like a poster and shirt and stuff. And Darcy was there, and then the original male girl was there. And so, yeah, it was very cool.
So I would assume the meet and greet, because we went to the thing that Bruce Campbell came to Louisville a couple of years ago. Maybe it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because what was that, 2017? Yeah, so 2.5 years ago, where he came. It was for the book. It was like a game show thing. Last Fan Standing, is that it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I'm guessing that's not on anymore.
Or whatever it was. Yeah. And like at the end, he signed stuff, but you get to chat with him for like a second.
Yeah,
like,
it was slower pace than that.
Yeah.
They were cool. I mean, not that he wasn't cool. They had a lot of people there and they had to get through.
Yeah.
And that was a long line. They split it this time because they had a meet and greet for an hour before.
Yeah.
And then anybody that was in line when they started the show, they got pulled to go to the front line after the show. So it was cool. We did a meet and greet before, which I went and got a good seat because they said, we'll do one afterwards too. So I just went to got a good seat because I don't have great vision and I forgot my glasses. Oh. So thankfully I was only like 4 rows back, so I could see fine. But then afterwards, it went kind of slow, but it was fine because it was a bar. People were drinking. It wasn't like you were just standing there doing nothing. People were hanging out.
Some guy had some dolls he custom made.
Yeah, somebody made some custom dolls and gave them to him.
Did anybody seem to be upset about how they were treated?
No.
They were being quite unreasonable?
No. Everybody was pretty cool.
I'm pretty sure, like after the Bruce Campbell thing, I had seen someone complain on a Bloody Disgusting article about something unrelated about Bruce Campbell. They were ragging on him.
Yeah.
And the way they described it, it's like, hold up. So you're describing your side of the story. Did you go to the thing in Louisville, Kentucky on this date and never responded?
Yeah.
And if they did, be like, well, your recollection of how things went isn't quite how it went.
Oh, yes, because he was roasting somebody in the audience.
Because, Bruce Campbell's
no, Joe Bob didn't roast anybody. So there was nothing like that.
It's the whole thing of, you have these people that are your idols. And in the case of like the Bruce Campbell thing, he's being kind of like a game show MC trying to drive the evening. And then the guy, his perspective was, well, the crowd was dead, so I was just trying to help liven things up and have a back and forth with them.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if they get into a back and forth with any of these random people, it's going to derail the entire thing.
Yeah.
So typically they'll, if it's a little quip, smart, little comment, they may be like, oh, cool, yeah, and then move along. But if you're like, yeah, man, what about this and what about that?
Yeah.
And this and that. And they're like, come on, I got a thing to do.
That guy kept going. So Bruce, of course, laid in. He kept trying to shut him down quickly to keep the show moving.
Yeah.
And you can't, I wouldn't want to get in a match with Bruce Campbell to try to like outwit him with comebacks and stuff. Because first of all, it's not your show as well.
Because what's funny is out of all the things that could have been seen as like insulting or upsetting,
he was softball with that guy, I thought.
Yeah, but like what's funny is like, there's stuff like that where they're just kind of, crowd work.
Yeah.
But then there was that movie that Julia was going to be in. Oh, One Must Fall is on Amazon Prime now. So you can watch that. That Antonio Pantoja directed that Julie was in. But at the time there was a role that was open that was like her boss character, and they were talking to some different people about it.
Yeah.
And then we were in line and he was signing stuff. Julie just asked him, was like, oh, like we have this movie, have this role. And she, wasn't doing like the hard pitch or being disrespectful, just saying like, hey, this is available. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, is it something that should pass to your agent or something? And, he handled very nice.
Yeah.
He was like, well,
he was direct.
He's like, yeah, at this point, I'm more about my legacy than about a paycheck. And, but never say never, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
So I could see somebody getting really upset about that type of thing versus, just the crowd work stuff.
Yeah. I think he responded perfectly to that. Like, it's probably not worth the time pursuing. Yeah. But I'm never going to say no without it.
Too, like it wasn't out loud on her either.
No,
I was like, yeah, if you want to just bring it up.
Yeah.
But it's just because like some people do get really upset if you like don't go to their agent first. If if you bring something up to them and it hasn't been vetted by their agent and manager first. So it's always funny, but it sounds like nobody was doing that thing.
No, because this wasn't like that was a game show where he's talking. He was. They did the pledge and everybody sit down and it was almost like he gave like this big thesis statement on redneck, lecture series. It was almost like a lecture about it, and it was great. It wasn't dry or boring. It was very funny. I highly recommend. And I asked him, I said, man, I said, any chance you could get Shudder to back this as a documentary? You know, because they would have to pay for rights and stuff. And of course, I didn't like go back and forth. But he's like, well, there's only the fair use. We can only use so many seconds of a footage if we use it in a documentary. But that's why, and I didn't go any further. But I asked him that because I knew that you had to pay, and maybe Shudder could pay the rights for some of this stuff, because it was like, I don't know if it was an hour and a half or 2.5 hour show. So, I mean, it was, you know, it would be a great documentary, because I don't know any documentaries about redneck cinema.
The problem with a lot of that stuff becomes, you know, and I just found this out from like YouTube stuff. So we'll show a clip from Halloween. And then the problem is there's 14 different people laying claims to the movie.
Yeah.
And the music and the soundtrack from the movie has just as many different people claiming it. So there's all these issues a lot of times with the way things are parsed out, especially if it's companies that don't exist anymore, whose assets are purchased by, you know, a hedge fund that then parsed it out and sold parts to different people.
I mean, it can be done though. You know, that happens all the time. Like Horror Noir, like tons of variety. You know what I mean?
The thing is basically just,
and they produce that.
I think it's basically just, do they see the return on investment there?
Yeah.
Do they see the interest? And two, on, you know, in his part, does he really want to go through making a documentary film and then having to go through that whole process?
Maybe not, but I just think it would be a shame if all this work he put into it. Again, this wasn't like a documentary format. This would be him talking. I think those can work too. Like the Brian De Palma documentary is literally him just sitting there talking to the off camera and to the camera, I think, and just him. It's a documentary about him. Like, I think I would be perfectly fine if there was a Joe Bob thing where he was just talking about that and narrating it.
Yeah.
Again, ideally you would get different people, you get actors from these films and all that, but they could do it. That would be much cheaper just to have him put this thing. It's just a shame all this work he put into it just to be lost because it is a live show and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the bummer for me, because I would love for you guys to be able to watch it, basically. Yeah. That's why I was asking. I'd love to be able to show this to you, Nicole. You know, even my dad would probably love this.
Yeah.
And so it's just a shame that if it lives on this, you know, he's getting up there in age. He's not he's going to croak in 10 years or anything, hopefully, but
well, you're never guaranteed that anybody's going to make it to the next day.
Exactly. I just, you know, and I know he does different things like
Kobe
this.
Bryant, you know.
Yeah, I know he does different things like this, but I had never seen him before live.
That could just be like part of the thing he likes doing is putting together these like informational shows and then doing a topic for a while and switching it up.
I just wish it would do an audiobook, you know what I mean? Or a book or something. Like have somebody say, hey, can you just put this out as a book?
Do a podcast. We don't have enough of those.
Yeah.
Wink.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that definitely sounded cool. It's always nice when like these different people kind of go around and do things and you get to see them outside of the context of what you normally see.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. So what was the percentage of people wearing black t-shirts to non-black t-shirts?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. It was a variety. It was a variety, you know. And two, he said something about shaking hands. I thought, oh, he's going to shake the hands, huh? But I got there, he held out his hands, you know. So, and two, that's a Southern thing too, is, you know. But yeah, he shook hands. Of course, I was shaking his hands. You know, Darcy was cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to go. So hopefully I'll be back through at some point.
If he ever comes back around, I'll go.
Yeah, he was in Nashville a while back, but I was for the same thing, I think. But I was there for a family trip, like a week difference.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't go back. It just didn't line up. So yeah. So I'll be shooting my thing next week. Yeah. Hoping everything goes at least somewhat smoothly. Hopefully get it done and it's not a disaster. Things are on track mostly. Got some things to tie up still, but
because at this point mine's mostly done.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think without giving like by the time the next podcast comes on, we'll be able to talk about it.
Yeah, I think they're going to make an announcement a week after I shoot mine. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know if it's saying too much, but I know the date they're going to do.
Sometime in the next month, I think there'll be an announcement. Yeah. Not that we're like involved in some huge Hollywood project.
No. It's a nothing beyond the scale we've been involved with before.
But it's just something cool that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I'm excited to kind of get all this stuff out there because, like, you know, whenever you shoot stuff, it's always funny because when you start doing an assembly cut, you're like, this is the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. And then by the end of it, you're like, I don't know if this is good or bad now.
Oh, I know. You watch it so many times, you're just
you're like, show people.
You know, we used to say at the TV station, this is not a good model to have for making a film, but it's better than good. It's done, you know?
Yeah. Because, like, there's also, like, there's a triangle. You can have it good, fast, or cheap.
Yeah.
You can only have two.
Yeah.
It's It's like, what if you can have it all?
Yeah.
That's what I tried to do. But
Yeah, so I mean, there's some amazing filmmakers that seem to have done it. Well, they always, yeah.
Well, people could argue like, oh, Robert Rodriguez, because he always did.
Yeah, that's what I'm
He always
thinking
did
of.
less with his budgets, and
Yeah.
then it's well, I liked a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, but also how long it took him a while. He didn't do it fast.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I mean, if you definitely compare like the shooting schedule for stuff from the Once Upon a Time in Mexico compared to the way things shoot now.
Yeah.
You're lucky to get, I don't know what the shoot schedule for that was. I know they shot that on digital cameras, and that was one of like the special effects. Like they have like machine guns. It was literally just like carved out of wood or plastic.
Oh, yeah.
And they just, put the muzzle flashes and stuff on it. But yeah, so we'll have more to come on that. I assume we'll be able to post some behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I would think so.
I only shared like one picture that was just like me and Juliet. So that shows you literally nothing, but we have other stuff we'll share as we're given the go ahead to do so. But yeah, so that'll be taking up a bit of time for you, especially this month.
Well, I will, but I'm having somebody else edit it, unlike you, and somebody else do the sound. You know what I mean? So I'm delegating a lot as stuff. So hopefully, of course, I'm sure I'll be in there giving feedback and then really get in there and tweaking the edit and stuff. But not as much as you've had to deal with it. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, until you're getting people that actually
I'm
not like an amazing editor or colorist or anything, but
I mean, I like also just seeing what other people will do when they're willing to do it. You know what I mean? And I found a friend of mine that was like, "Oh yeah, I'll take a crack at editing." So I was like, "Okay, cool." Just to work with different people, because if we did do other bigger projects, it's like, oh, it'd be cool if they edited 20 minutes of it. You know what I mean? And then somebody took on 20 minutes and somebody else took on 20 minutes. If we were trying to do a fast turnaround or something. So yeah.
Yep. So that'll wrap up our discussion, and I think we'll have at least one more of the videos we're doing too. So I'm doing videos it's a series called The Ghost of Kentuckiana. So it's basically just going to places in Kentucky and Indiana that either have urban legends about them or that are currently abandoned or creepy and have historical significance, or just places like that across Kentucky and Indiana. Done 3 of them so far. They're on the YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, and our Instagram. So you can go watch those and let us know if you're interested in seeing stuff like that.
And those are pretty short content, so
it's just a couple
you don't have to dedicate
minutes.
much time to watching it.
Yeah, and then because we've done ones on areas in Louisville that had urban legends, and I went out and got some footage of a place this cool location in Indiana. There's different places I intend to go to the spring and summer, just places I want to go to visit anyway. And then it's not ghost hunting stuff. It's more of just we're presenting to you what the story is or the history is. We're not making an interpretation on it. I may change the format up in the future if that's what people want to see. But I also don't want to do a bunch of on-camera stuff and walk around. It's mostly just here's video footage of here's a place that has urban legends about it. Here's video of it so you can see what it looks like.
And then there's some text information. Yeah,
because a lot of those things, if there are videos on YouTube or whatever, it's somebody walking around with a potato cam, just getting, not succinct video where it's 15 minutes, somebody just talking to the camera and it's handheld chicky. So this is let's just go through and do those types of videos where it has text over video and it gets you done and out in under 3 minutes or something. So you check those out. Like I said, we'll have the announcement hopefully in the next month at least of what this project is we're working on. And you can find all the stuff we're doing at housevideostore.com or hbtvs.com. You can find all the links, all the stuff we're doing there to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all those places. These new formats just monthly. We're just covering what we've watched, and we can talk about other things. So the next episode should be 1 month from now, the first week of April.
And there's a bunch of stuff that's VOD. Hopefully I'll have more time now that this is wrapped up.
Yeah.
That, some bigger stuff, Color Out of Space. There's a bunch of stuff hitting VOD, VFW that I would like to see at some point. So maybe next time I'll at least try to hit some of those. Maybe they'll overlap. Maybe Derek will watch one, you'll watch one, depending on what all is out there. So, yeah.
Yep. So that'll wrap up this episode of the House But Base Store podcast. Thanks for listening.